Today I'm going to talk about how to learn matchups in Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. Now, you might ask, why should I listen to you? You're a very small YouTuber, you're not a top player, what authority do you have? It is true that I'm by no means a top player, but I am ranked pretty highly in my region, and one of the reasons for that is because of my matchup experience. Whenever I go into a major, I study VODs to learn the matchup, and that matchup knowledge carries me through round 1 pools and gets me about halfway through round 2 before I lose. I've done relatively well at regionals around my area, and I've done, like I said, pretty okay at majors. I almost always make it out of pools, so while I'm not a top player, learning matchups is one of the things that I've definitely been better at in this game. As opposed to just adaptation throughout any individual set, I learned the dominant strategies for each character. I think in general, learning matchups is one of the most underrated skills, especially among mid to low level players. The reason for this is that typically, when people lose, they're quickly to look at it as a fault of them as a player and ignore matchup knowledge. So when they try to get better, they're trying to get better overall, and in doing so, they ignore certain things about the matchup. However, even when someone just outplayed you in a player v player way, learning the matchup is a great way to move forward. Even top players do this. After I think it was Shine, MKLeo made a tweet that he needs to go back and learn the Peach matchup. And this was after he had beaten the best Peach in the world over and over and over again. So the idea that, you need to focus on your overall player skill and ignore matchups is just not true, and you see that at the top as well. Lastly, there are 80 characters in this game. Even if you have amazing fundamentals, even if you have 70% natural talent, you are not going to succeed unless you know how to fight different characters and different types of characters. So how do you do that? Well, let's get started. Tip number 1, learn the burst range of each character. This is really important because it teaches you how to play safely against any character in the cast. If you're playing within their burst range, then you are letting yourself be vulnerable to something you can't react to at all times. When you stay out of their burst range, you can react to their movement, and that's where reads and prediction kind of stem from, right? So if you predict that somebody's going to come in with a dash attack, the way that works is you see them start to approach, and then you think, okay, they're going to dash attack, and you react with whatever option. When you're in their burst range, you don't give yourself this opportunity to react and to actually implement your reads in the right way. Also, understanding burst range can inform a lot of future interactions. For example, overshooting and undershooting are a major part of Smash. Overshooting is when you make a read, but instead of doing it where the character's at, the read is that they're going to be further away, so you overshoot your character and you get the hit that way. However, if somebody is if you throw out an option where somebody's at and they try to dash back and then hit you for it, you can see that as kind of a bait. They're in your range, then they go out of it, then they go back in. So understanding burst range is a very important aspect of understanding basic mind games. It's also worth noting that learning how to play safely can beat a lot of mid-level aggressive players. A lot of players are just going to throw out options within your burst range or at you, and so learning how to just kind of weave in and out and play safely around them will lead you to a lot of victories over these players. Tip number 2, learn what their biggest punish is at different percentages and learn when your death percent is. So this is really important because you are never going to win rock, paper, scissors all the time. You're not going to win neutral all the time. People are going to hit you, but if you know what options to avoid that are going to do the most damage or put you in the worst positions, then even when you lose those interactions, it's not as big of a deal. And because of this, you have more opportunities to learn what they're doing and adapt later. I think people have this idea that Smash and mind games are this incredibly fluid thing, and to win a mind game, you just need to completely understand what this one individual is doing. But in reality, a lot of decisions in Smash are based off of what the opponent's character's best options are. I'm Inkling, so I'm going to go for a lot of grabs because I get the most reward from that. So when people learn to play around grabs, it's not just that, oh, well, I'm not making the right read. It's also that they are taking away one of my best options, as well as forcing me to approach a game in a completely different way than I am used to. Tip number 3, learn their general weaknesses. So what I mean when I say general weaknesses is that you should learn the situations to focus on and learn what situations to avoid. So as I've previously said, Inkling struggles with platform camping. So if you start to platform camper, you still might get hit, like, the Inkling can read you, but at the same time, knowing that that's like a better situation to be in gives you an idea of where to adapt to. So instead of saying, oh, well, my platform camping isn't working, let me try to play more grounded, you can go, okay, well, they did this thing, they read my jump off this platform or whatever, and after that, you can go, okay, so I'm going to not jump from the platform. The thing is, if you went the other way and went, oh, I need to be more grounded because platform camping isn't working, you'd actually be putting yourself in a much worse position against Inkling because that's what she likes to fight. I think a good example of this is knowing when to edgeguard characters versus ledge trapping them. If a character sucks on ledge, you need to ledge trap them, and if the character has a really bad recovery, you need to exploit that. But if you are going off to edgeguard a character whose recovery is actually really hard for you to hit, and you keep messing up and you go, okay, they just read this specific option, I need to edgeguard them a different way, you're still fighting the wrong battle. You need to understand the situations to optimize before you start thinking about individual reads and counterplay. Tip number 4, learn what stages you should ban or counterpick. This is pretty straightforward, but I think a lot of players, including myself at times, are very likely to just start on PS2 and go to stages they're comfortable on. That being said, sometimes you can find stages that work really well for you or are really bad for your opponent. I think Lylat is a great example of this. People tend to not want to go there because the stage just feels awkward. However, learning if your character does well or even okay there can be very beneficial when you know what characters really struggle. For example, Peach and Daisy can't float nearly as well on ledge because of the slants. But if you're not comfortable taking them there and the Peach and Daisy forgets to ban that stage, you're going to miss a big opportunity. There is some data on what stages are good for different characters, and granted, I'm not too sure what the source is exactly, but one thing you can do is try to experiment and record your own data. If you have a friend over in a matchup, especially one that you struggle with, playing a set on each stage and recording the game count and who wins can be a great way to try to understand what stages you should pick, even if they don't feel great in the moment. Tip number 5, dive into specifics. I think specifics are one of the things that people overlook the most in regards to learning matchups. Very frequently, certain interactions are seen as being a read when it's just an option you need to learn how to deal with more generally. I think a good example of this is learning what options you can do out of shield to punish certain options. So, for example, Pichu, my main at the beginning of the game, her out of shield nair was frame 6, so she could punish almost any option out of shield because her nair was so fast. However, when I'm playing Inkling, a character with a worse out of shield game, I have to learn more specifically what is and isn't punishable on shield and how to play around that. However, when you learn the optimal punishes, you're going to get bigger rewards more consistently. For example, Bowser, his fair can be shield grabbed. Now, he does have a mix-up with side B, so I'm not saying the optimal strategy against Bowser is to just shield his fair. But knowing that you can shield grab his fair can lead to big punishes, especially if your character gets a lot off of grabs, and it makes you prepared to deal with that situation when it comes up. Another good example of a character's specifics is their jank. So I think Snake Grenades are a great example of this, right? They break Snake out of combos, they're kind of awkward to deal with in neutral, and, there's all the movement mix-ups with B reversing and stuff. So a lot of people that I know complain about Snake because they're like, I can't combo him, this matchup's terrible. But it's they could be, I don't know, I don't play their character, but you have to learn to deal with that stuff, even if the end result is still a losing matchup. You have to learn when you can and can't combo him, when it's worth, trading with the grenade and blowing both of you up, stuff like that. Bowser is another good example. He has super armor, he has a very strong up B out of shield, he has all this stuff. And a lot of people will just be like, I can't jab him. And, that's something I do have to deal with. I'm Inkling. But it's like, okay, then don't jab him. There are very frequently, straightforward ways to deal with these things. Sometimes the options are way more situational. I think DDD's Ledge Trapping is a good example. You have these Gordos, and you have to, deal with them, and if you mess up, you can die. Or, Samus's Down B on Ledge, it's a very good situation for them, but it's incredibly specific, and you can learn the counterplay. There usually is at least a little. Sometimes it relies on different timings and what to do when you're in certain positions versus others, how fast they're putting this option out, stuff like that. If you do this and you take away a character's jank, you will be so much better in a matchup. If Luigi's down being consistently and you just shield it and get a super hard punish, you are going to do way better against Luigi than if you're getting hit by it consistently. I think one of the other things with this is when you are fighting a character that is pretty jank, try not to complain and just try to think okay, well, what can I do here? What is the dominant option that beats this? Because usually when you find the one thing that works, you can just do it again and again and again. And good players are probably going to adapt and punish you for what you're doing, but that's just getting outplayed, generally. But especially mid-level players, they will just do the jank over and over again. So if you learn to avoid it, you'll be way better. So I guess with specifics, this can apply to basically anything, right? The way you DI their combos, the way you combo them, the way you edgeguard them, ledge shot them, everything. Everything can be thought of as specifics because every character is different. And I think this is very daunting for a lot of players because they think, for one, even if I learn some character-specific stuff, I'm not going to get better overall. That's so small and only applies to this one matchup. What's the point? I want to, be on another skill level. But the thing is, this is how you improve. You have to learn these character-specific things. This is why there are good players. This is why good players do well consistently. Why there's matchups top players struggle with, and why there's matchups they always win. It's for these reasons. They have learned all of these different specific things. So even though it's not this immediate answer that's going to make you better in an instant, you have to learn this stuff and put in the time. If you keep learning new specific things, over time you're going to get way better, you're going to be way more consistent because you have way better matchup knowledge, and you are going to get much better results.